Hey everyone, this is Brock from Black Hat Forge. I just want to say thank you for clicking on the video. This is going to be the first video in a series where I'm going to show you guys how I make my integral kitchen knives. We're going to start with something like this, just a 1 inch by 1 inch round bar of W2. Turning it into something a bit like these. And then from there, turning it into our finished product. Something a bit like this. So I hope you guys stick around. Again, I appreciate you guys checking out the channel and checking out the video. If you do enjoy it, please leave a like. And if you want to stick around for the next few videos in this series, they should be coming in about a week or so, hopefully within this week. Yeah, please hit subscribe and hit the notification bell. Thanks. Hey everybody, welcome to Black Hat Forge. I guess this will be my first video probably. You'll have to excuse the lighting. I need to get some lights in. Today what we're going to be doing, I'm sure you've seen from the title, we're going to be doing some forged integral chef's knives. This is kind of the base I'm working off of. I don't know how well you can see it. But just a nice chef's shape of like a French chef's knives. I really like how they look. I know a lot of people don't do them forged because doing integrals all forged is a little tricky. There's usually a lot of grinding and fitting at the end of it, which I don't really enjoy. So I've been working the past week to try and really work out a process to completely forge the bolster and do as minimal grinding as possible. So I'm going to kind of walk through that. I'm going to do a couple practice pieces. That's probably what y'all see mostly. I just kind of walk you through my process of how I go about it. Yeah, here we go. Got my steel already heated up. It's been soaking for a few minutes now. I don't know how loud this is going to be. I'm starting from a piece of W2, not square, round, and we're just squaring it off right now. Get it about the inch by an inch, give or take. Maybe an inch by an inch and a half. You have to excuse all the noises. Anyone who works in a shop knows it can be noisy at times, so audio is a pain. I spent the past 45 minutes trying to get the audio sorted. So I brought y'all to the hammer so you can kind of see what's going on. All we're going to do now is get the bolster isolated. So you just kind of pick a point. I kind of have a rough estimate of how much steel I have each time I forge one of these. So about there. Flip it. You don't necessarily have to flip it. I do it just to even things out a little bit. Looks okay. You can kind of see what we're going for. So the camera can actually see it. So I mostly got this idea because I don't really enjoy grinding and polishing and doing all the cleanup that most integrals call for. I made this one a little while back. I don't know how well you can see it in this light. Let's see if I can show it to the camera. Came out pretty nice, ground really clean on the bolster area, and I really like this bolster. I like the shape of it. I like the feel of it in your hands. So I really wanted to replicate that, but with a forged look because I like the look of just forged pieces better. So I've been going about this week really practicing, trying to get the shape, make the tools, and do it all in a timely manner that would be profitable. Also, if you don't enjoy YouTube videos where people are constantly just philosophizing and talking to themselves, you might be in the wrong place, so I apologize. I do a lot of that, especially when I'm out here in the shop by myself. So yeah, today we're gonna try out some new tools that I made, some tooling for the hammer, and see what we can get. Because I made this 2 days ago. I'm waiting on a piece of wood for the handle, and I like how it turned out. It's not bad. It's got some imperfections. The blade shape is really nice. The profile is really nice. Like as it runs into the bolster. So yeah, this is kind of the genesis of this project that hopefully you guys will see the culmination of. But we'll see. Depends on if I can do it or not. Hopefully I don't screw everything up on my first YouTube video. Okay, I think that's in focus. So now all I'm going to do is start drawing out the blade shape. Nothing fancy. We're going to do something similar to what I showed you on that earlier practice piece. Again, you'll have to excuse the air compressor going off randomly. So after I got that initial piece done, the one I showed you already, today actually I forged this out, which isn't a bad piece. It's a little closer to what I want when it comes to the forging process. The biggest problem I have, and I think most people have, is the bolster. When I make a chef's knives, I want my heel to sweep almost underneath your bolster. So when you're pressing and you're cutting and you're making whatever you decide to make, you don't want the blade to slip away from you. It's constantly underneath where you're working. So naturally there is a overhang, I guess you could call it, in the way of your bolster. To combat this, I'm trying to make some tooling and some pieces I can use under the hammer to isolate it and almost run underneath it while I'm working it. Which I did earlier, and it didn't come out great. It left a lot of marring and scores on the bolster itself. So after that, I decided to make a new tool, one that's a little bigger. And really, I don't want to take away the look of a forged piece by grinding out, not a die, basically a tool for under the hammer. So I just made this out of W2. I left it fairly rough. It's just somewhere I can isolate material without compromising the heel of the blade sitting behind the bolster. So we'll see. We'll see if this works, and if not, you'll see the whole thing. So that should be fun. So start widening out that blade. I say blade, there's no blade yet. It's just so all we're doing is just working it. is working horizontally on the hammer. Instead of drawing it out widthways, we want to get some width out of it. Or excuse me, instead of drawing it out lengthways, we're trying to get some width on it. Because another thing I like when I make my chef's knives is you want a bit of width to them. At least for me, because when you're cutting, your hand is running with that blade. So if you have a blade that isn't quite as tall, you run the risk of cutting your fingers. So I like to make my blades nice and wide. I think it looks better too than some really sleek, thin blades can look better or can look good, but I think personally this looks better. Do a little work on the anvil just to get the tip started. Also, this isn't going to be a tutorial as much as it is me just filming my process of kind of working things out. There are better people who make tutorials on YouTube than I ever could, and better smiths than me on YouTube than I could ever be. So I'm not trying to take their spot and give you tutorial videos, but I want to show you guys my process. And if there are better smiths out there and they see things I'm doing wrong or can give me advice in this kind of area, bring it on. I think it's such a nice part about the blacksmithing community on YouTube or in general is not all the time. There are a lot of good people that want to share information and don't know how. I don't know if I have a ton of information to give. I'd like to think I do. And this is just my way of communicating that to you. I enjoy watching YouTube videos of people just forging and working because you learn a lot that way. At least I do. I can see people's process. So yeah, that's kind of what we're going for here. I want you guys to see my process. If you see something I could do better, I'm open to recommendations. And if this inspires you just to go out and make something, do it. Like, it's... Set the camera up. I feel like when I started, it was just on a whim. I went out and bought some fire bricks from Harbor Freight, or Lowe's. I brought a hairdryer and some charcoal, and that was it. Just kind of started that way. And a cheap anvil from Harbor Freight with a hammer. Yeah, my phone just dinged. So yeah, just if you're interested in doing something, just go out and do it. So this is looking a little wonky at the moment, as you can see. Our spine of the blade is sitting above the bolster, which is another problem I tend to have. I've done it in a way when I have a press. There are some dies you can make that will correct that very easily, which I don't have a press right now. So what I'm thinking is I'm also going to use my bolster isolation tool, which, I mean, essentially it's a piece of W2 welded onto rebar. It's nothing special. And I'm going to try and straighten up with that. It's hard to explain, so I'll just show you. So we'll see if it works. I intentionally left the spine of the blade get too wide. Almost have an extreme example just to see if I could get this to work. So we'll see. Well, I realized looking back at the video, I kind of was in the way of that. But we will be doing that again, I'm sure. So we'll get there. Don't worry. Just trying to get that spine a bit straighter. All we're doing right now is just widening the blade. Nothing special. And if you don't have a hammer, well, I'll show you. Now naturally, not everyone has a power hammer, but if you're looking at this by hand, you can totally do that. We've all been there. Obviously, you can use a normal rounding hammer. Whoops. You can use a normal rounding hammer. The problem with that is it will widen the blade, obviously, lengthways and widthways, because it's round. So naturally, it'll push the steel in all directions. So the solution to that is a peen. You have to be careful because you don't want to mar it too deep that you can't grind out the blade, essentially. But with 1 or 2 heats, you can get a ton of work done with just a cross peen. I'm just working near the heel of the blade. We're not working a bunch of different parts of the blade at once. You just kind of want to do this one part at a time. It's going to look a little wonky, but and look how much material you can draw out in one heat. And that wasn't even working it that well. Straighten it up a little bit. Yeah, you could do a ton of work with this. In a blade like this, 4 or 5 heats, you're golden. In fact, I think I did this one that way. No, somewhere. The one I showed you originally. This, I think I did most of the widening with just cross peen. So it is doable. May take a little time and elbow grease, but you know, we all go through it. As everyone starts smithing, if you started with a power hammer, good for you, I guess. So I'm gonna try the camera on that side and see if you can actually see what I'm doing when I'm straightening up the bolster. That worked And this is kind of the process. You work the blade until you get to where you can clean it up a little bit. Run this under the hammer. Just to straighten everything out. I'm just checking my thickness of the blade, make sure it's fairly even on the spine and the blade. Because we're not really doing a whole lot of beveling right now. We just want... Okay, now we're going to try something a bit new. One of my biggest problems when forging a bolster really close to shape is you get a bit of concavity in the heel, or near the heel of the blade. Let's see if I can actually show this on camera. I don't know why you can see it, but essentially these edges push up and in, so almost it pinches itself. So what I'm going to try to do with this one, before I get the blade too close to shape, and before I start shaping the bolster, I'm going to push those edges down. So just take an angle on your hammer. And that's mostly on the bottom side of the bolster. The top side you can work pretty easily with a hammer, hand hammer. But the bottom is where you get a lot of issues that you can't really get to later on. It looks pretty good. So we're gonna see how that works out. Again, this is kind of new for me. I haven't tried this yet. Not in this way. So see if we can work it out. We're just gonna keep working on this bolster. Hold on. Get my trusty calipers. It's actually pretty close. Pretty happy with that size so far. I think we're just gonna do a little straightening. Getting our width. I'm not too fussed about length on a lot of these knives. because you'll naturally get a good length. Finish talking before I do that. You'll naturally get enough length out of it. At least knowing how much steel I have, because I work with the same materials. I know I can get enough length out of it. Getting the width is where I have a little bit of a problem sometimes. At this point, my audio went out because my microphone died while I was recording. Here, all we're doing is still widening the blade, trying to get a good shape that I like. Again, our main focus is really making sure we have a good width on the blade as opposed to length. You want your kitchen knives to be nice and wide and comfortable for the user. All I'm doing here is switching to some flat dies to square everything up. Just cleaning up the area of the blade near the bolster and straightening things. Here I'm actually going to start working the bolster down, getting it nice and square so we can start our isolation for the material for the tang. I take this process pretty slow. I want my tang to be really a nice sharp drop off from the bolster. That way we don't have a ton of grinding to do. Occasionally you'll see me take an angle on the billet, one that's not quite square. That's just to, if I may had a mishit or something like that, just to re-square the tang where it should be. You can see here it's almost a diamond shape in certain spots, so we'll probably take a corner here in a second and just forge that back down. It's an easy fix, so if you find yourself doing that, just take your time, pay attention. Right here you can see me taking that angle just to force that material back in. Obviously I still have the rebar that I was using for the for holding with the tongs. I really will probably leave that till after the grinding. I use it to get a lot of good leverage. Usually if you have a shorter tang, it can be hard to hold the blade while you're grinding sometimes, so realistically I can leave that till we start getting ready for a handle, and I'll just cut it off then. You can see we're getting pretty close here. The shoulders of my bolster are nice and square. There's a couple jagged marks on the bolster you can see, but that's just going to happen. We'll take that off in the grinding. It should be a pretty easy grind. Right here, I'm just pushing the shoulders of the bolster in, because when you hold the blade, you don't want it to have those really sharp corners. So I just like to round them out so it's a little more comfortable to hold. Right here, we're just doing a little bit of shaping, or straightening, excuse me. Not a whole lot of shaping to be done right now. Okay, now that we have our blade forged out mostly, we're just going to take it to the grinder and clean up the profile. I'm going to do a whole video on grinding these knives. It should be the next video in the series. But I feel like this is part of the process of getting your profile down, so I figured I would include it in this video. Plus I hate leaving a knife kind of looking like this. It kind of looks a little weird at the moment, so we'll just grind in our tip, clean up our edge, and then make our spine nice and level with our bolster. Main thing to think about here is if you want to keep the forged look on your bolster, try as hard as you can not to touch it while you're cleaning up your spine. I'll kind of show you what I mean as we go. We got a nice fresh 36 grit belt on. So usually when I do a spine, I do it this way. That way it's nice and consistent all the way down. But if you're doing these and you have a bit of a lump, I don't know how well you can see it here. There's a bit of a lump right after the bolster. So for this, I'm just gonna take it horizontal and knock that out first, and then we'll clean it up, grinding like this. Okay, so that's pretty much it. It's a pretty quick job. Like I said, I don't really like grinding too much, so I try and forge these as close as I can. We just got the, like I said, we got the tip ground and the spine aligned, and I did a little bit of work just here just to knock some of the, not really slag, but there was some spots I didn't really like that were kind of pinched from where we were forging it, so I just adjusted that a little bit. But yeah, it came out pretty clean. I think it's a pretty good looking knife. It'll come out pretty nice, I think. I like the shape of it. It's a good feel. So, yeah. So you guys stay tuned, and in the next video we will be grinding this and getting it ready for a handle. So that's where all the the hard work's going to come in. So be sure to stay tuned for that.